What does creativity look like in games? There's probably a few answers that immediately come to mind. Minecraft, of course, and other creativity tools are the usual answers that are often thought of for creative games. Build whatever you want, simple or complex. If you can dream it and you have the skill or knowledge of the game's systems, you can make it. For more niche examples, you may have thought of logistics games like Satisfactory that require creative thought processes to come up with the solutions to open-ended problems. And of course, these are correct answers. These games promote and encourage you as a player to imagine the possibilities with the systems given to you and construct something amazing using those building blocks. However, I'd argue that there's an unlikely type of game that also falls under this definition of creative games. Due to the vast differences in so many of these games that have no single genre, I'm going to lovingly call them mechanical sandboxes. Now, let's get the obvious out of the way. Every game has mechanics, and there are so many actions that you can take in games. Run, jump, aim, shoot, crouch, slide, attack, defend. But oftentimes in games, these verbs are either limited in the scope of their applications or very rigid in how they interact with the game's environment. This is not to say that these are bad or incorrect for being designed this way, but they aren't what I would define as a mechanical sandbox game. Let's take Demon's Souls for example. A fantastic game with tons of replay value, and of course the progenitor of the beloved Souls series. To preface, this is not a slight or an insult of this magnificent game or the Souls series as a whole, this is simply to illustrate the point about rigid actions. Breaking down all the actions a player can take, here's what we come up with based on your equipped gear. You can move, attack, block, guard break, parry, riposte, backstab, dodge, shoot, cast, and use an item. A modest but dense list of actions that are designed to play perfectly into that visceral, deliberate combat style that Souls games are famous for. Looking at this list of actions, each of these generally fills one, maybe two purposes at a time. Run to close distance or create distance. Attack to damage enemies or break their poise. Block to avoid damage. However, all these actions function largely independently from each other. Parry leads into riposte, obviously, and attacking might transition to dodging if an enemy tries to retaliate, then you could launch a counterattack from a better angle, but none of these verbs modify or inform the other actions on the list. Here we enter the creative realm of these mechanical sandboxes. As stated previously, these games cover a breadth of genres, from traditional action RPGs to stealthy immersive sims, some hack and slash games, and even a few first-person shooters. I had a hard time even beginning to come up with the connecting thread that makes these games fall into my mechanical sandboxes category. I spent some time really thinking about what makes these games play in such a unique manner relative to other titles. The main difference lies in the idea of follow-through. Let me explain. What these games do differently is that each action can seamlessly chain into a plethora of different interactions. Some can only be performed when specific requirements have been met from your previous decisions, and every action you take impacts the context that you, the enemies, and the environment are currently in. It's up to you to take your current situation and influence your surroundings to create the solution to the combat-oriented problem that you face. Every one of these games has so many additional options attached to the basic function of each input that it's staggering. Many of the actions you can take unlock new interactions with the enemies or the environment in that precise moment and can be chained together in a way that is punchy, exhilarating, and just plain old fun. These games have so many ways for all the options available to you to be utilized that your mind can just run wild with ideas on how to mix game mechanics together to achieve spectacular results. Another phrase I came up with that I think adequately describes the way these games are played is PvE playmakers. Playmaking, as defined by sports, is initiating offensive play with the intent of scoring a goal or the equivalent of a goal. In these mechanical sandbox titles, everything from how enemies often heavily outnumber you to your limited pool of health compared to that of your foes that can take multiple hits to put down, to an arsenal of readily accessible tools in your kit, all lend themselves to an exhilarating gameplay loop that encourages you to make plays similarly to how you would in sports. Come up with a plan based on what you see. Execute on the plan, adapt to how the enemy reacts to your plan, as well as some of your own minor miscalculations on your ability to execute, and score a goal. Repeat. These strategies often have to take shape quickly, and your adaptation to changes to the plan have to be even quicker. If your plan involved stealth and you're spotted, how are you going to transition into open combat? If you planned your movements to kill a group of 4 enemies and 3 more show up, what happens then? These games are at their best when you're planning the use of your tools to set up amazing plays, as well as remembering the other tools at your disposal when you need to change your initial plan on the fly. Another common feature in these games is large enemy variety. This pushes you towards a diverse playstyle that ensures you aren't making the exact same plan for every encounter. Some variants frequently seen across games and genres are shield enemies that can block your basic multi-hit combo from the front, ranged enemies that can force you to keep moving and dodging, and brutes that can take more punishment and counter some of your abilities. When faced down with droves of varying enemy types, the player is pushed into a very intense but rewarding playstyle that requires you to switch your strategy from moment to moment and chain your inputs in increasingly complex ways to be victorious. Harder difficulties in some of these games demand mechanical mastery to push through the enemies with increased aggression, damage, and health, which in turn leads to the player finding increasingly creative ways to approach encounters with the tools they have. Many mechanical sandboxes tend to have a low skill floor and a very high skill ceiling. The idea of skill floors and ceilings is precisely what it sounds like. A skill floor is the basic passing ability to clear the game's challenges, while the skill ceiling is the ability to clear a game's challenges while interacting with a variety of the mechanics at the player's disposal to achieve things at the razor edge of the game's limit. Sometimes the reward for this mastery simply lies within the bragging rights of just, look how awesome I can play this game. Official implementations of the skill floor and ceiling can be found in games with graded scoring systems. Just passing a stage will give you the bare minimum of an E or a D grade, while getting through with a high score, completing special objectives, never getting hit, or chaining massive combos can increase your grade up to that all-powerful S rank. Something that I found to be true of just about any of these mechanical sandbox games is that they are enthralling to watch an expert play them. Seeing brand new interactions that you never even considered, clever uses of items or abilities that seem worthless on your first playthrough, and just generally presenting the game to you in ways that can make the experience feel brand new. A great example of a mechanical sandbox expert is StealthGamerBR. The things they come up with to do in games just fascinates me. I often find myself re-downloading old titles that I've played through tons of times just to see if I can begin to replicate anything close to the endless symphony of creative solutions they concoct to beat the game's challenges. They make parts of these games just look like a cakewalk and completely obliterate the ankles of the AI trying to keep up with them. Like any creative tool, the best part is that there really isn't a correct way to approach a project you want to make. Once you have understood and mastered fundamentals like redstone and observers in Minecraft, you can go on to build ridiculously amazing machines. Mechanical sandbox games are quite similar in this way. Once you've mastered the basic inputs, you can approach the game like any other creative project. One that's just waiting for you to add your artistic touch to turn its building blocks into a masterpiece. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching and making it to the end of the video. If you liked this video, leave a thumbs up and subscribe to hear more from me in the future about games and game concepts that I absolutely love. I also want to thank my subscribers. The support I've seen on my first 2 videos has been tremendous, and I feel like I finally found my stride with this discussion style content about the things that I'm passionate for. And lastly, I'd like to know in the comments, what are your favorite mechanical sandbox games? Maybe they were shown today, maybe I've never heard of them, or maybe I just didn't even think of it. Let me know what games you always find yourself coming back to every time you realize a new layer to its mechanical systems. Thank you all so much, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.